You're seeing all these protesters, even in the Capitol building. And you know what's interesting? We know who they are. Our government knows who they are. The Biden administration knows who they are. I know who they are. I provided the information with various media outlets and various reporters, and they have utterly ignored it. So I'm going to spend my opening talking about who these people are. Are they just happening? Is it just wokeism? No. It's much worse. Believe it or not, we've been infiltrated. We've been infiltrated, the Hamas network in America. And over at George Washington University, they've written all about it. They put a paper out this month. Their program on extremism at George Washington University, the Hamas network in America. The media aren't even looking at this. It's available to everybody. But I want to tell you about it, because that way you'll know about it. In the months following the 1987 formation of Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood branches and offshoots throughout the world activated themselves to assist the newly formed organization, that is Hamas. According to international documents released in federal court, in 1988, the head of the Palestine section of the Muslim Brotherhood in the Middle East traveled to the United States, where he met with fellow Muslim brothers to seek their support. The result of the meeting was the formation of the Palestine Committee of the Muslim Brotherhood, in America, of course. In October 1992, internal memorandum of the Palestine Committee clearly explained the Muslim Brotherhood's vision of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I quote, "Palestine is the one for which Muslim Brotherhood prepared armies, made up from the children of Islam and the Arab and Islamic nations, to liberate its land from the abomination and the defilement of the children of the Jews. And they watered its pure soil with their honorable blood, which sprouted into a jihad that is continuing until the day of resurrection, and provided a zeal without relenting, making the slogan of its children, 'It is a jihad for victory or martyrdom.'" The document also called on the committee to work to, quote, "increase the financial and moral support for Hamas, to fight surrendering solutions," in other words, no peace, "and to publicize and focus on the savagery of the Jews." Reflecting the traditional pyramidal structure of brotherhood organizations, stick with me, they're very important. The committee was composed of the heads of 3 U.S.-based organizations that had been set up to aid Hamas in Palestine. The general purpose, Islamic Association of Palestine, the financial arm represented by the Occupied Land Fund, which later became the Holy Land Foundation, and the United Association for Studies and Research, a think tank. These 3 organizations, each operating in its field but all deeply interconnected, constituted the public face, here in the United States, of the secret structure of the Muslim Brotherhood Hamas in America. They've infiltrated our country, and this is not being discussed in the media at all, even with people I've shared these documents with, these scholarly documents, this one from George Washington University. Now, there was a meeting in Philadelphia. The members of this committee decided to convene an extraordinary 3-day meeting in Philadelphia held at the Marriott Hotel near the city's airport. The closed-door meeting was attended by some 20 top leaders of Hamas support network in the United States. Unbeknownst to the participants, the FBI placed wiretaps into the hotel, taping most of the conversations that took place behind the doors of the hotel's conference room. The transcripts of most conversations were introduced as evidence during the Holy Land Foundation in 1993. Attending the meeting were representatives of the 3 groups making up the Palestine Committee. Following a common pattern, most of them were united by blood ties and lived in tight-knit communities, such as in Washington and Chicago and Dallas. So here's part of what they were discussing. Faced with 2 conflicting needs, the participants opted for a 2-pronged approach that differentiated between its internal and external strategy. Within the Muslim community, agreed the participants, the committee should maintain its support for Hamas undeterred, engaging in various activities to aid the organization. In the coming stage, they said, the most important thing we can provide is to support jihad in Palestine. I believe it is the only way if we want to bring the goals of the Oslo Peace Accords, in other words, to destroy them. Fundraising among local Muslim communities was immediately identified as one of the key activities the group should have engaged in. The newly created Holy Land Foundation, in fact, was to collect funds for Hamas while giving the impression that it was destining them to orphans and needy children. Well, of course. At the same time, argued meeting participants, the committee should have engaged in an extensive effort to educate the American Muslim community, convincing them that the peace accords harmed the Palestinians and that Hamas was the only force worth supporting. Several participants argued that the committee should have been particularly active in spreading this message among the youth. They said, "We don't want the children of the American Muslim community who are raised here in schools and in Islamic schools and non-Islamic schools to grow up surrendering to the issue of peace with the Jews. I mean, we don't see in 10 years the growing generation in America surrendering to peace with the Jews. Therefore, there must be curricula and teaching materials which spread in Islamic schools and in weekend schools." Another speaker argued that the committee should have used the annual conference and the network of Islamic schools run by affiliated organizations to disseminate books and introduce speakers who could raise awareness over the need to support Hamas, happening right in our country right now. Has been happening for decades. If the internal strategy of the committee aimed at mobilizing the American Muslim community to support Hamas, meeting participants understood that they could also play an important role in aiding the group by influencing American public opinion and policymakers, and that would include the press. Ahmed, in particular, stressed the need to increase the committee's influence with Congress. This can be achieved by infiltrating the American media outlets, universities, research centers, he said. It's also achieved by working with Islamic political organizations and the sympathetic ones such as the American Muslim Alliance, such as the United Muslims of America, such as Muslim Public Affairs Council. If Muslims engage in political activism in America and started to be concerned with Congress and public relations, we will have an entry point to use them to pressure Congress and the decision makers in America. You see that happening all over. You see it with Tlaib and the Squad. You see it with soft support for American policy. And by the way, all these groups hate America, want to take America down, and I have no doubt we're involved in the 2020 riots. The development of a carefully crafted media strategy defending Hamas without giving the impression of supporting violence was deemed to be one of the most important aspects of the committee's public relations campaign. Ahmed spoke of the need of broadcasting the Islamic point of view in U.S. media, adding that when Jihad appeared on CNN and talked in the way that he spoke greatly reduces the severity of allegations of radicalism. The media-savvy Ahwad followed up on Ahmed's words with a presentation on the media strategy, stressing the importance of, quote, training and qualifying individuals in the branches and the communities on media activism through holding special courses on media, highlighting the importance of writing op-eds in prominent American newspapers. Ahwad's strategy has long been heeded by U.S.-based Hamas activists upon the return to the Middle East. In fact, over the past few years, former U.S. Palestinian Committee head Musa Abu Marzouk and former UASR Director Ahmed Youssef, currently senior political advisor to Palestinian Prime Minister Islami Hanali, have published several editorials in American newspapers. Discussions at the meeting made it clear that participants fully understood that if within the Muslim community they had decided to openly and unabashedly support Hamas when dealing with the general public and policymakers, they needed to take a more nuanced position when dealing with the general American community. And that is exactly what they've done. And the report goes on to explain it. And again, I've shared this with many American reporters and news outlets, and they've completely ignored it. Completely ignored it. They said in order to be able to continue their activities in the United States, the participants agreed that a new organization with no evident ties to Hamas and operating in ways that would have made it appear as moderate in the eyes of Americans should have been founded. The amended bylaws of the Palestinian Committee drafted in 1991, and this all going on in Philadelphia, when they met. It is hoped that it will become an official organization, this group they wanted to form, for political work, and its headquarters will be in Washington, God willing, they said. It represents the political aspect to support the cause politically on the American front. Basing their judgment on ample evidence, U.S. authorities believe that organization that they founded to be the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, which was founded in Washington a few months after the Philadelphia meeting. In fact, IAP President Omar Ahmed and Public Relations Director Nihad Awad, both members of the Palestinian Committee, who had attended the Philadelphia meeting, became, respectively, CAIR's Chairman Emeritus and Executive Director. So they've infiltrated our country, they've infiltrated our schools, they've infiltrated our media. And they still are. And that's why you see a turn in policy. And they've infiltrated the Democrat Party. with Tlaib and others like her. This is no joke. This is serious. People talk, oh, it's wokeism, or why is this happening? I'm telling you why it's happening. He's being funded by the enemy. It's being funded by terrorists.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to levintv.com and subscribe now.